Welcome to this tutorial. We are going to be sharing with you a fantastic 30-mark top band answer from Crime and Deviance from 2019, and the focus is from the gender topic. So what do you need to do to get a fantastic top band answer? So it's always really good to check out the mark scheme, specifically the top band, to see exactly what the examiner wants to see. So for example, you need to have sound conceptually detailed knowledge. So it's not always names, but it is viewpoints, explanations, and as many sociological words as possible. Your AO2 is applied accurately and sensitively to the issues raised within the question. So that means your knowledge is applied, you want to link it back to the question, and in every paragraph state why is it relevant. In this case, it's asking about levels of female offending. And lastly, your analysis and evaluation is explicit and relevant. So your evaluation is applied to the point that you've just made rather than bolted on. And also you can then develop a discussion within a debate between the theories and perspectives because they compare and they don't all agree on the explanations of why a woman might commit crime. And then you can always reference the validity of statistics and that source of data as well. And that does appear on the top band of every 30 marker on crime. You can always question the validity. Finally, your answer should always have appropriate conclusions to be drawn to get yourself into that top band. So looking at the exam question, you need to make sure that you are reading it carefully, and I advise my students to do something called the triple read, and what that means is you read the item and the question carefully. The second time you've got your pen in your hand, you underline important things that you think will help you answer that question. So go back through the item and back through the question, identify some trigger words and so on. And then the third time, this is where you start to annotate, and this is where you're getting all those ideas out of your head onto the paper and start to make a plan. So when you look at the item, you are using this as a starting point. So for example, words like socialization or position in a patriarchal society, these will lead you to some sociological explanations that you might wish to consider. Likewise, in the second paragraph, you've got a clue here, the police and courts, which then allows you to explore the criminal justice system and also the impact of media stereotypes as well, and how female offending appears or are represented within the media as well. You can also question the validity of either statistics or for these media stereotypes as well. And at this point, you may want to pause this tutorial, have a go at planning your answer, use the question, go back to the mark scheme, and then join back in because we're going to explore some example of this student's paragraphs. This student got 30 out of 30, and she did have an introduction, but it's not essential, but it is a good way to get you writing. But it also maps out your answer and it shows that you understand what the question is asking. So here's her example of the introduction. So they identify in context that female offending is lower than males, and she starts to bring in some of the ideas that she is going to explore in her answer. So offending has been low, but it's increasing since the sexual revolution, and it questions, is it because of patriarchal control or a weakening of patriarchy and women's liberation? So you should already be thinking, oh, she's going to be talking about Haydn's own and Adler's theories. And is there more to consider in terms of class and ethnicity, indicating that she is going to explore those a little bit more in detail to get some analysis marks? And has postmodern society and diversity resulted in this change? So a very clear introduction to start your essay off with. So looking at paragraph number 1, we start off with a clear link to the question, female offending is increasing. And then they reference the item as well, position in a patriarchal society, applying sociological research, and uses Hyde and Tone as a point of reference there. And they look at how women are controlled in a patriarchal society, and firstly addresses within the home. Another link back to the item there with our idea of socialisation. But at this point, she uses functionalist and sex role theory to show how women are controlled within the home and links it into gender roles such as our expressive and our instrumental role, and suggesting because of this is restriction means that women are less likely to offend. She then starts to explore this a little bit more in detail by comparing it from a radical feminist perspective, and actually it is this control over women through domestic violence. So we've got an example of a crime there which then suggests that female offending is reduced, and actually as a result the level of offending in males is higher in comparison due to toxic masculinity. So we've got a little bit of analysis within the end as well. In her paragraph number 2, this student continues with Hyde and Tone explanation, and that's okay. It shows that she's got a real greater depth of knowledge and understanding to explore this theory a little bit further. So this time we're looking at control within the public and in the workplace, and she addresses the workplace first, and she identifies a concept of the glass ceiling, which then suggests that women are less likely to commit white collar crime. So we've got a clear example of a crime there, and explaining why, because of supervision, because of the supervision of males higher up, and also she references how white collar crime are not always reported in comparison to street crime. So that also adds into the effect that it looks like women don't offend as much. In terms of street crime, the control within public, this time she's looking at surveillance and CCTV, and she links it into Foucault and this idea that surveillance is internalised and it's an extension of the male gaze, and uses examples of assault to suggest why females do not commit these crimes because of the male gaze and because of patriarchal control. So she brings it back. She ends this paragraph with evaluation. It is determinist to apply this conclusion to all females and offenders, and it's applied to the point that she's made because she suggests that if it was the case that as surveillance is increasing, the female offending should either be consistent or decrease. But she recognises that in terms of utilitarian and non-utilitarian crimes, that they're actually increasing despite this increase in surveillance since the sexual revolution of the 1960s. And at this point, she's leading herself quite nicely into a third paragraph where she's going to explore liberation thesis and explain how women's crimes are starting to increase. So alongside Adler's liberation thesis, where we explain why there is an increase in offending since the 1960s, with a little bit of evaluation and criticisms of this theory there as well. You can then also explore the gender deals, and this will give you this level of analysis where you can compare why working class are more likely to commit crime based on that research by Carlin compared to middle class, and the deals that women are given. You could also look at the representation of females in offending and whether there is a moral panic, and you can explore that concept in a little bit more detail. And then you have got this evaluation of official statistics on female offending, and you can then explore the chivalry thesis and which might explore why women are less likely to appear on crime statistics, but then compare it to actually there are some instances where women are overrepresented within the criminal justice system, whether they're judged in comparison to being a good wife or a good mother, for example. Now remember, throughout all your other paragraphs, you have got to stay explicit to the question. It is about female offending, and try to make sure that you are evaluating as you go along, being as specific as possible, especially if you want to cement yourself in that top band. To finally end your essay, you need to make sure you've got a clear conclusion. It is essential. It did say it at that top band as well. And make sure your conclusion references back to the question and comes to some sort of judgment. And this student does do that. She then starts to say it is important that we need to consider a range of explanations of female offending, whether we are comparing it to men or whether we're looking at different females and how they're represented in the media and I suppose statistics as well. And she makes this statement at the end that suggests that it is evidently an issue that we need to explore a little bit further beyond the concept of patriarchy. And that does sort of like make you think a lot of the explanations that we have looked at in this answer has explored it via patriarchal either control or being liberated from it, or the influence of patriarchy on chivalry. And actually, it could be quite useful to see some more research which might suggest that women do commit crime and they do it because they like it, and you could explore the thrill-seeking nature of it instead. So she comes to a little bit of a conclusion there. This student's full answer achieved 30 out of 30. It was sound and conceptually detailed. There was a range of relevant material of offending, and it was applied sensitively. It focused on female offending throughout, and she used the words from the question to really focus her answer as well. The analysis was there and evaluation was specific and relevant, and there was evidence of a debate where she then started to compare different viewpoints, functionalist, feminist, postmodern ideas as well. And she also made sure that she questioned the validity of crime statistics also. So before we finish, let's just have a look at the examiner comments, and it is really useful to see what the excellent answers did, but also to avoid the traps that the weaker students did fall into. So it did provide all levels of quality. Some weaker answers became sidetracked, so they focused on male crime or they looked at victims of crime, and they didn't really focus on that word female offending. In generally, they did make an effort to apply material from the item. However, your weaker answer were more common sense, where your better answers were developing their answers a little bit more successfully with some idea that there is a moral panic about female offending, which then has led to some increase in control or criminalisation of females. Now, our good answers, considering the following: hide and zone, control theory, liberation, weakening of patriarchy, class and gender deals, and the chivalry thesis. But the best answers evaluated throughout the essay. And they give you an example of that. So, for example, hide and zone and control theory, they question the extent to which changing gender roles is making the theory less relevant in today's society, and then linking this to the liberation thesis. And your better answers questions the relevance of the chivalry thesis, especially if there is more women working in the criminal justice system also. So massive thank you for watching. It was a 30 marker. If you do have any questions, please leave a comment and have a fantastic day. Bye.